Well, last Sunday we dug ourselves in a hole. So this Sunday we have to go to Atlanta, dig ourselves out. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saint. You rolling into your arch rivals town Sunday, division rival, coming off a devastating loss last Sunday at home. Division games are always huge, especially when you're in a situation the Saints are, and pretty much probably everybody in the NFC South is. The situation where odds are a wild card may not be able to cut it. You can't. I don't think any team in there can count on double digit wins right now. So you want to win your division to get that playoff spot. Rolling 5-1, 6-0 in division is a way to do it, and it's a big win when you can go grab one on the road, especially against again your arch rival Atlanta the Falcons, who's sitting 1-2 right now, but has played three really good football games so far this year. They were in all of them. They had a chance. They pulled the game out against Philly. They had chances in the other two. So it's it's a big game all the way around. We have to right the ship. We've got to overcome the injuries. We've got to overcome our own self-inflicted wounds that we kept, um, both coaching and players that we kept inflicting on ourselves Sunday. Have to clean all that up because we played. This is the one takeaway I got on this. We played very two clean games, weeks one and two, blew a couple teams out. What that means, we'll find out. Um, we played probably the exact opposite of that on home on Sunday against a good team. And they, I mean, they eked out the win. Let's be honest. It was a very close game the whole time. But as we covered in the last video, just the crazy circumstances of the game, it could have been a large victory for Philly and blown us out of the dome, or we may have been able to pull off that last minute and pulled the game out and went home with our tail between our legs, but still with victory. So this game's important. You go in Atlanta, you beat Atlanta, you're on the right side of the numbers on division in the division. You're still above 500 after the first 4 weeks. There's a lot going on here that as bad as everything looked this week, you can make it look a whole lot better come next Monday morning. To go in there, you find a way to win this game. I don't want to say it's a must win. It's hard to say that in week 4, especially when you start off two big victories, but we've seen this song and dance before. So you got to stop it. You now got to cut that out. No backsliding, no thinking about, hey, we were 2-0 last year until I don't want to be sitting here next year at this time thinking anything along the lines, hey, once again, we were 2-0, but then fill in the blank. So it may not be a must win, but it may be a must win if you stop and think about it, that we've got to stop this trend that if we're not careful, we're going to start falling back into old habits. And if we do, forget about the playoffs, forget about everything else. So I can't emphasize enough. You got to go in Atlanta and find a way to win this game. So just go ahead, take a look, break it down by the numbers. We're going to start off with the Saints offense against Atlanta's defense. Um, this is, I think, the key to everything is the Saints are predicating so much on what they do, getting points. Obviously, what NFL team doesn't, but the way they want to go about doing it, stay ahead of the chains, keeping that pressure on the defense, dictating what happens. Um, Ball control, more or less, burning clock while they're doing it. Go downfield, make sure you're efficient in the red zone. You score points, preferably touchdowns. Worked beautifully for 2 weeks. Not so much in week 3. Overall, most of the numbers would indicate, hey, maybe that was just an anomaly. Maybe we can, right the ship, get back on track in a perfect world before we start talking about specific stuff as far as our offense and their defense. But on the strict matchup, going across the board, total yards, statistically, we'd have an edge, all things being equal. Passing, slight edge on their defense. Um, Rushing, slight edge on what they're giving up. But still, in the ballpark, all these numbers that if you get anywhere near them, you feel pretty good. Unlike last week where we struggled to move the ball mightily. So if we move the ball, we're going to score points. Not a lot of teams can say that. Last year, we moved the ball an awful lot and couldn't score points for most games. So we can't backslide into that. So we have to be thinking we're moving the ball, we're matriculating down the field, we're going to get points every single time we do it. Scoring, notwithstanding last week, that hurt the scoring average quite a bit, obviously, but I think it's getting more down to what would be the realistic expectation. I think you want to win football games right now if you're the Saints. You got to be thinking seriously hard. 30's a high watermark that you got to get in there somewhere. If you don't, could be a long day like it was last week. Specifically, though, red zone and third down. Our numbers have been good on all that all year. They were still pretty good last week. We just third down was surprisingly good considering how that game turned out and the numbers we had. But even red zone got down there and we got points when we did, except for one, which was maybe more of a coaching play call than anything else. We could have got points out of it. We just passed on the opportunity to do it and then execute the play properly when we did call on it. So it's again last week, but on paper by the numbers, we should have had an advantage. But we know Philly's good. Atlanta's kind of in the same boat we're in the sense of we don't really know what this team is. I don't think they really know what their team is yet. It's all kind of coming together in the first 3 weeks. May take a couple more. So again, we have to figure out a way to right the ship, get in there and get a win. And we're going to need the offense to perform much better than they did last week. I don't think we can expect weeks 1 and 2 by any stretch of imagination. Got to find the happy medium in there somewhere in between. When you're looking at the Saints, or rather the Falcons defense, this is where the kind of the anomaly comes in. But yeah, the games against KC and Philly, some pretty good offenses as we found out. It may be skewing the numbers a little bit because when you start looking at the players, I mean, their D line, and look, where we're starting all this with the McCoy injury and missing him, and we'll kind of talk about roster makeup and all that a little later, but they've got to figure out a way to block some pretty good D linemen. Juden, Carter, Jarrett, Onyemata, all good players. A couple of them very good players. Grady Jarrett seems to be just timeless, just can keep going, sort of like Demario does for us, just keep going every year and being a very good football player. I don't know how much depth they got behind them. I think what you're looking at the defensive front, DA said it earlier in the week, the NFL is a copycat league. Now, I don't know if Atlanta can do exactly what Vic Fangio had that Philly defensive line doing because, let's be honest, they have some good players. They don't have the disruptive force that Jalen Carter was in that game. Once upon a time, Grady Jarrett was that guy also years ago. And if he were to find it again to be that guy, it's going to be a long day. Telling you that right now. You got to figure out how to block that front. You got to expect, and they definitely don't have the depth at defensive line, I don't think, that Philly did, where Philly could keep going that 5 and 6, rotating guys in, keeping them fresh, just keeping that pressure on offensive line, making it unbearable, which made it unbearable for Carr to operate the offense, made it unbearable to get runs off, made it unbearable to get the ball down the field. If Atlanta can scheme it, and look, their head coach, Raheem Morris, basically is a defensive guy. I think Jimmy Lake's their defensive coordinator. They can scheme something up. They have good players to be able to pull. It may not look like Philadelphia made it look, and it may not be as effective, but I think they can get in the ballpark. So our O-line's got to be ready to go. Even with McCoy out, got to figure it out. got to be able to move some bodies in there. Because if that defensive line plays well, you got a couple guys. Again, another Onyemata is a name that sounds familiar, right? Well, here's another one, Caden Ellis, along with Troy Anderson. That's two really good linebackers. They're going to run around and make tackles, and like linebackers do while they're running around and being effective in the second level and making tackles and getting around the ball. They can wind up. Either one of them has chances to wind up with the ball. So ball security is going to be an issue, even if you can handle that defensive line because these guys are going to be around and they're going to be coming up ready to tackle. It seems almost like it's a lot like what Philly was looking like last week, where that defensive line was handling so much, and you had, especially Zach Baum, but you had both their linebackers just running around cleaning everything up, even for most of the game, even when we could get a little bit going. Expect more of the same. You get in their secondary. Okay. Jesse Bates has been one of the best safeties in the league since Cincinnati drafted him, and he showed up in the league a few years ago. We should remember him. He's the one clean pick six when we played Atlanta the first time and took the loss on a drive where we were in the red zone about ready to score, and he just flipped the script and housed it the other way. He's that kind of player. You got to keep your eye on him. You got to be aware of what he's doing all the time. And he's the guy that when he starts doing stuff like that, he can take a game over from the defensive side. I think that's one of the reasons why Atlanta's defense is getting better, because it's got that strong anchor back there on the back end, and he can play deep. He can come up in the box. They added Justin Simmons, who we were looking at. I'd put him kind of in the honey badger mode where you might be able to get him. I mean, let's face it, Goddard got Badger once clean last week, and then another time caused Badger to miss a tackle for another one of his gains. I think Simmons is in the same boat, but if you're not careful with him, if you get careless around him with the ball, he'll take it away from you. He's still going to provide plenty on that back end, and he's still probably one of the better safeties like Honey Badger in the league, even though, unlike a few years ago when you couldn't get him at all, you keep going at him, sooner or later you're going to get some wins more than likely. So, and much like Honey Badger, when you're doing that, you got to be careful, because if you put the ball out there, if you're throwing it, put it in danger. If you're running it and put it in danger, two guys that can still likely get their hands on it and create a turnover. I think the corners are where they're a little suspect and where you can kind of attack them. AJ Terrell, probably their best guy, and I think is a good enough NFL corner, especially when you have good front line play and good safety help like he has behind him. Hughes and Alford are their probably next two guys, but I think you can win some battles in here. Again, if you get the offensive line problem figured out with the defensive line and get the opportunity to move in that area, I think there's some stuff there you can do. But ultimately, we're going to have to run the ball. That's just what he keeps going back to. You're going to have to deal with that defensive line. You have to deal with those linebackers coming up to make plays, even if you can get holes through the line and get space in there. So our big thing on offense is we have to be able to run the ball. We have to be able to run the ball. We have to be able to run the ball. And now it's paramount important that they figure out that center issue plus the two guards. Not only McCoy's injury, but Ruiz could play a big factor in figuring this out, however it's going to play out on Sunday. I don't know if you want to rely on having to throw yourself out of the hole a little bit like we did against Philly, because if you do, I don't know if you're going to have a very much different outcome than what we had against Philly as far as the offense is concerned. I don't think they're as good, but they're a whole lot better than the two defenses we started the year off with. So it's going to be a tough task. Got to solve that problem up front. Got to get the running game going. Going by the numbers on the defense side, our defense against their offense, I think it's a little more clear cut. First thing off the bat, we're going to start with Kirk Cousins because one thing where we get a break here compared to Sunday is Cousins is more along the lines of what we saw in Young and Prescott. I don't quite know if he has the ability anymore to really kind of move like they do because all three of them are not used as weapons in the offense like Jalen Hurts was. So you're not necessarily always defending 11. There'll probably be circumstances where if he could still tuck in and run it a little bit and gets the chance to do it, he might. But I think much like, I mean, a lot of ways he's like Derek Carr. He wants to make his plays from the pocket. I think he doesn't mind moving around a little bit occasionally, doesn't want to make it a habit, but doesn't necessarily want to go, you know, till he has to, doesn't really want to go tearing down the field in scrambles. But Carl do it. Carl will do. In fact, he luckily got us a 4-yard run Sunday to kickstart one of the drives for us. So it could be there, but it shouldn't be something we necessarily have to defend like we were doing with Hurts. The biggest thing about Cousins, and I will say he's a lot like Carr in this. Um, you let him get comfortable and you let him heat up. He can start running an offense and he can definitely put the ball downfield on time and on target. And he's got some weapons down there to be able to do it with. You really don't want that to happen. You really want to keep him as uncomfortable as possible and try to move him off his spot a little bit, as they say. Gonna have to get some pressure on him. Get him sort of like Carr was, uncomfortable, having to make some back foot throws, which you really don't want to do, but sometimes that's all you got. Um, Anticipating that rush after a while. And even Hurts, who would realistically be considered a much better quarterback than both of them, we did it to him. He definitely had some off schedule throws. He definitely had some kind of back foot. I'm ready to get rid of it because they're coming type throws. So we've done a pretty good job of generating that pass rush to do that to quarterbacks. Um, in fact, saw it on Twitter this morning from one of the Saints beat writers. By comparison, last year after 3 games we had 50 pressures. We got that number up to 62, largely because we have two defensive ends that can do it, and Brazil has played a really good inside in those pressure situations. So got to keep that up. I think defensively we can keep that up. We're going to be in pretty good shape. Because the next thing up on the list is probably what Atlanta's. I mean, that's what they want to do. This guy named Bijan Robinson. Well, he's like another Saquon Barkley. So you're dealing with that again. You got to get your run fit. You got to account for him in the passing game. You cannot miss tackles. You cannot miss the opportunity to try to make a tackle. So no bad angles, no jumping out of position to give him a clean shot into the secondary in the open field because, like Barkley did to us last week, you do that to Bijan Robinson, we're going to be in deep, deep trouble. Got to eliminate all that. That I think that's your two major points of concern. What you want to do on offense, make the quarterback uncomfortable, and just make sure Robinson can't break one loose off on you. That he's going to be almost impossible to stop or very difficult to stop. Maybe you can do it, but you definitely want to contain him. You want to keep him under control. You don't want him snapping off 60-something yard runs. Um, the remaining playmakers are all guys sort of like our second level playmakers when you look at them. You don't want to mess around with them because they can hurt you. But if you kind of keep them under control, they're solid NFL football players. They're going to do their jobs. I think all of them are pretty good. But if you leave them alone, if you forget about them, if you blow a coverage, if you miss a tackle, all that other crap that was kind of leaping on Sunday, these guys can hurt you. Algiers hard enough to tackle anyway. We had a game with them. I think it was 2022 where we couldn't tackle him. He just went off on us. Drake London, Kyle Pitts can be very effective. Have not really lived up to their potential in the NFL, but will show flashes. And if if you forget about them, if you mess around with them, these are guys that can hurt you. I think really two guys you really have to be concerned about is Ray McCloud, who Frisco there for a while, and I think started with Pittsburgh, but he's always been the guy. He's fast. You don't want him getting loose in the open field. He can definitely hurt you. Um, it was never really a focal point in Frisco, but he was one of those guys that all of a sudden coming out of nowhere is catching a big ball or running a reverse or doing something along those lines that could flip a game, flip a script, and kind of get Frisco a big play when they needed it, when everybody else was looking at all to defend all their other guns, and he sneaks in and makes a play or two. So he's still that guy. So you gotta have to be aware of him. Plus, I think he's gonna likely. I think he was doing returns for him. But Darnell Mooney's always been a guy with a lot of promise in the NFL. Was stuck in Chicago with that mess for years. He's shown up in the first 3 weeks and could be a guy moving into a bigger share of that offense and getting the ball. Um, so we've seen him before. So we that's another one. You don't want him shaking loose. You don't want to hold them unaccountable for. You better know. You better understand. So again, no missed tackles when these guys get their hands on the ball. Got to get them on the ground as quick as you can. No blowing coverages, any of that stuff. Because I think their offensive numbers, I think, kind of bear out the fact that if you don't make the mistakes that give them the explosive plays, you can kind of contain all that. Their numbers show they can still move the ball complimentary. I think they want to be a 50-50 team run pass. But you can lock them down a little bit in the red zone. You can get some third down stops on and make them give up the ball. So they're not going to constantly put pressure on you. But if you're not careful, they're going to hit you with a big play. I know they did that to Philly at the end to come back and win that game. So you want to stay away from any of that stuff. And that's a big cleanup for us because last year it was the big play that ultimately undermined our defense. And you cannot let that happen again Sunday in Atlanta. Okay, this started out originally as the three key stats I think we need to control to have a shot at pulling this off. But I changed it to four. The first one is this number needs to be zero from now until the end of the season if we want to win some football games. But the first key stat is um, 0 times running into our own players. Seriously. I was at the game live Sunday. I saw the Three Stooges doing their Larry Curly Moe on the big play to Goddard that ultimately sunk us in that game. And there was talk afterwards several times, some videos I watched before I could break the game down of it happening. It happened numerous places. It happened on the offensive line. It happened special teams. There was a couple where it was kind of, what are you guys doing? Don't know what caused it. Don't know why it was happening. Needs to stop. Needs to be zero. Uh, Thumbs up from all of y'all that we're going to issue the challenge to this team that from this point on till the end of the season, they need to lead the NFL in the number of times you run into your own teammate, and that number needs to be zero. They need to be the best in the NFL of not running into our own teammates and screwing crap up massively. I want to say that's in jest, but no, I'm making it a serious stat. I may actually have to start charting this the rest of the year because we can't have that stuff anymore. The three that we need to come on the right side of to get out of here with a win. Turnover margin. We're +4 on the year. They're -2. So as good as that defense is, and we know there's some ball hawks out there, I think Bates might be the only one with the turnover. I think he had the interception to end the Philly game. I don't know if the rest of them have really gotten involved much in it yet. We can't let them start Sunday. Protect the ball. Don't give them anything easy. We have done a really good job of that. And so the offense needs to continue doing that. The defense needs to find ways to take it away again. So we can say, I mean, technically we're +6 on them on the year. I think if we're +3, we're in the game. especially if the +3 is because we haven't given any up and we've taken it away from them 3 times. Sacks allowed, we're averaging giving up 1 a game. They've given up 5 and 3. We need to bring pressure. So that's one we need to win. We need to avoid the negative plays on offense. That goes without saying. That's been our mantra from the get-go, that if we get too many negative plays on offense or not enough positive plays, +4 or better, we're going to struggle. See Philly. But at the same time, we need to keep bringing that pressure. Now, we talk about injuries a little later, but we all know that they're going to be down. Atlanta's down there starting center too. They had to put him on the IR this week. Some other injuries up there. One of their offensive linemen, I think, missed because his wife went into labor. So assuming he's going to be back, but they had some offensive line missing the last couple of practices. One we know won't be back. So whatever that turns out, we have to take advantage of losing players up front, like we did against Philly when they started losing defensive tackles. We were, other than breaking down and giving up the big plays, for the most part, we were doing a pretty good job of shutting them down. Needs to happen here too. So as much as we need to overcome our injuries on the offensive line, we need to take advantage of theirs on their offensive line much as possible and get to Cousins. Do not let him sit back there like a statue and be able to get the ball down the field on time and on target, because that's when you get the monster Kirk Cousins games. The other one is penalties. We're 18 for 160 yards on the year. They're 14 for 118. We got to clean that up. Now, I think we've done a better job compared to week 1 about being a little better in the penalty situation. Being at the game on Sunday, I can tell you we lucked out and just got the crew that didn't want to throw a whole lot of flags unless they felt it was obvious at some point. But even that's questionable considering CD Deuce did finally get fined in the NFL for the hit on Kamara early in the game. That should have been a penalty. So that notwithstanding, they weren't throwing a whole lot of them. So I think we kind of got away on that. And the thing is with penalties, there's crews that throw flags. There's crews that don't. You never know what you're going to get. If you watched the game last night, there seemed to be a happy flag crew. And I actually went to bed because it was getting so late I couldn't stay up and stay the end. Like to avoid that. So we need to if regardless, if they're not throwing them or if they're throwing the flags, however the penalty margin turns out, we really need to be on the better end of that to have a chance, because if we're giving up a lot of yardage during the penalties or putting ourselves in holes due to penalties on offense, going to be a mighty, mighty long day. The other one I have is, oh my Lord, just a gripe about our game day roster. I've kind of had raised eyebrows the first couple of weeks, but really the results of what happened, we started losing players. Like Alvin had a little some type of injury that apparently was keeping him out of that last drive. That's why we had Jamal Williams on the field. Again, the biggest gripe I have is, Dennis DA's like, we always 8 linemen active on game day. Okay. I don't know what the running call is on NFL offensive lineman active, 8 or 9, whatever. And they kind of have this thing where, well, we've got 3 and they can all play multiple positions, so we're fine. Then it turns out on Saturday, when you lose your most valuable offensive lineman, I've always had a gripe about not having a dedicated center to back him up. But okay, so we're going to move our guys played really good at left guard to center, and then bring in Udo, who I'm sorry, just wasn't very good most of, if not for all of the game on Sunday. But you're sitting there thinking, and we were sitting there going, well, man, you got Saldivar and you got Landon Young both active. At some point, do you just go, hey, maybe we throw one of them in there and see if they can help pick up some of that slack in the middle that we're not getting? Yeah, well, Saldivar came in to take one snap when Ruiz left on his injury. We find out, well, Landon Young, who barely practiced, if at all, during the week, was only active because he was kind of the emergency guy. And I'm like, yeah, it was kind of in a big emergency because once McCoy went down, we were struggling just so badly on the interior that if he could have came in and played left guard and tied some stuff together and helped out a little bit. And maybe we block a little bit better up front and can do a little more for such a razor thin margin of error. I know we signed the new guy that's on the practice squad right now. He's 32 years old, longtime NFL vet. I keep seeing interior linemen. I'm not hearing like he's been a center for the last 8 years in the league, because I think that's a big issue. That especially now that McCoy is going to be out as long as he's going to be out. This shuffling thing, we brought Lemieux up. Hopefully, I don't know what they're going to do there. I don't like it. I'd like to go find a guy that plays center, can do all the stuff a center needs to do as a center full time, including help call the protections and stuff. Because we're going to wrap this part up when talking about the linemen. Been well documented in the last couple of weeks how Carr has said, and they've talked, the coaching staff talked about taking a little bit off his plate, including that protection up front stuff, and giving it to McCoy. And that how Carr didn't like it at first, but he's like, I kind of like it now. It's kind of freeing me up a little. I'm playing a little better. Not one less thing I have to worry about, which was kind of the coaching staff's intent. Is all that out the window now? So knowing that, going, hey, if we have a center that really knows how to call everything and it's helping our quarterback play better, again, I'm going to go back to, so didn't somebody think if we might just need a true center to back up McCoy just in case something happened? I don't know. But when you start looking at the game day roster, I feel like we've got a couple of too many guys that all they do is play special teams, not getting them on the field. Either they're only special teams only, going, look, you some guys start dropping, then all of a sudden, it'd have been nice to have Mims, I think, available on that last drive, maybe opposed to Jamal Williams, just to see, or while we were struggling to run and Alvin was getting banged up with all those carries, see if Mims could pop it in there and do something. It was really to that point later in the game. And on offense, it's kind of going out. Let's see what the young guys can do, maybe, because you weren't just getting a whole lot done. I mentioned this in the last video. McKinstry, I think it was 4 special team snaps. Late in that game, when you know what they were trying to do, and they were down some players, where you kind of had to figure, man, it's going to be Barkley, Goddard, or Hurts. It's going to have to lead them down that drive to score the touchdown to beat us, which was pretty much Hurts and Goddard. But if you have find a way to get another good cover guy who plays the run well and comes up and hits and tackles, it kind of gives you everything you want in those situations. Well, he only took his 4 or 5 special team snaps all game. He's on the bench. Think need to sit down with Rizzy and go, you're going to have to figure out a way to do what you want to do on special teams with a little less dedicated special teams bodies, because we've got to get these guys out ready to be on the field and play. So, and the last one is you're kind of getting in trouble is, I don't know if Saunders is going to play this week, but I'm absolutely going to lose my shit if he doesn't, because you could have IR'd him. So he misses at least 4 weeks to be brought back. You would have another spot on the 53 with another spot available to make some of these moves without having to do the call-ups from the practice squad, which you're limited. We brought up one. It was Stalbert, so he could play special teams. We were down a lot of guys at the end. We were missing some guys that probably could have been on the field that could help us out, either not on the field or just not available because they weren't active on the game day roster. They need to figure that stuff out, because at the rate NFL players, this isn't a Saints thing, are going down all around the league. Yeah. You're going to have to rethink hard who's on the 53 and who's going to be on the active game day roster, and not wing it, I guess, with 8 linemen, because, hey, we got a couple of guys that can play multiple positions. I don't think that's how you want to do it. Just caught DA's post-practice press conference a little while ago. No need to wait. By the time you see this, you will probably have already heard that Demario Davis and Cesare Ruiz are out for this game. So the problems on the offensive line have just gotten worse. defense, which you were really hoping to keep you in the game, is going to be a lot tougher without Demario there in the middle. Don't really know. Well, let's talk about the offensive line. They're just patchworking this now together completely. Hopefully, they figure out a way to overcome it. It was going to be tough, but I had the feeling when I started this video a while ago, Ruiz was likely not going to be there. He hadn't practiced all week, and they were talking about it being a knee. So I was doing it on the cloud, assuming he wasn't going to be there. I was holding out hope Demario, who's never missed a game due to injury, was going to get on the field today and be able to at least not be listed out officially right now like he is. Uh, Also, to that point, Kamara was on the field today, but I'm a little leery. He falls into the Taysom Hill slash Marshawn Lattimore of each of the last 2 weeks going. I'm starting to get some practices in at the end of the week, which is normally a good sign in the NFL, but yet we don't have them ready to go on Sunday so that they're inactive. So Kamara, not breaking news here. This is just a guess going. It wouldn't shock me if we don't have Kamara for Sunday either. So this thing's gotten real tight and real tough. On the offensive side, again, it's patchwork. They're just going to have to do the best they can, and my expectations aren't that high. That's what makes the Demario news so like a gut punch at this moment because I was really hoping to have him on the field. That goes a long way. We'd be looking at a game very similar to last Sunday, but going, we might have the shot to pull it out. Atlanta, I don't think is as good, at least right now at this point in the season, as good as Philly is, despite having the victory over them. So, thinking maybe we can get in there and steal one. It's going to be incredibly tough right now. Pete Warner in the middle, maybe, or maybe Willie Gay gets his audition for a 3-down starting middle linebacker, but I figure heavily going there. Anthony Orgy's going to have to play. I think we got some of the younger, maybe Jackson or Ford, but I would think Jackson would be the only guy you'd really be leaning on if he's healthy enough to play. Don't know. Maybe Jonathan Abram comes up from the practice squad. Could go a little heavier safety looks at time, in the box almost with that safety linebacker look. I don't think the Saints do that very often, but some teams around the league do. You got Alontae Taylor in the middle. He may have to slash the slot corner role, may have to slash linebacker, may have to actually use him not as an actual linebacker, but his role maybe a little more in the middle than you would normally see. So, well, they can patch it together on that end. They have some talent there still to do it, but you're missing the heart and soul of the offensive line and McCoy, and now you're missing the heart and soul of the defense and really the team. He's kind of the de facto leader of the team, and Demario Davis. They say, when they're handicapping football games, home team automatically has a 7-point advantage. If that's true, I am looking at this team and going, I don't know how you can make up that 7-point advantage. Now, again, haven't seen the official injury report. We know they're starting centers out. One of their tackles hadn't practiced all week. Maybe that evens it up a little bit. Their Judon showed up in the injury report yesterday, but I don't know how much of that matters considering how much we're losing of guys that we really need to be on the field that are not going to be on the field Sunday. So having said all that, I haven't exactly been great at predictions that everybody wants me to do, I guess, just to see how badly I'm going to screw it up. But right now, I can't in good conscience pick the Saints to overcome that 7 points. I think they had an outside shot of getting in there and literally stealing a win at this point. It would be going into Atlanta on Sunday if we win this game and Grand Theft Auto. We're stealing and flying out of there like our heads were on fire and our behinds were catching. So let me throw out, how does 24-20 Atlanta sound? It could be a struggle for both teams to score that many points. Who knows? But this game was in our place, maybe. maybe I'd be a little more okay with it. But they're going to Atlanta, and even though it's a different coaching staff and everything else, there's still a lot of people that remember what the hell happened when Game 17 last year when they came to our place. So we didn't even really talk about that, but just to sprinkle that little thought in there too. It's going to be a tough situation to go in there and win this game. So regardless, Sunday night 9:30. Don't forget live post game show. We'll be in here. I'm really hoping with the Saints win. It's a lot more fun with the Saints win, obviously, but they got their work cut out for them. Let's just put it that way. A lot of work cut out for them to get out of Atlanta with a win. So if it's your first time here, please go ahead, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification. We welcome you back. Stick around. We do this 3 or 4 times a week, depending, but we like to get together and talk about the New Orleans Saints. So till then, till next time, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?